Hey guys, welcome to a quick tutorial on how to carry out a fire mission according to the Gulf procedures used in the Australian Special Operations Task Force Armour 3 Milsim unit. Now this tutorial is going to cover every single step from acquiring the mortar, setting it up, finding your target and firing, just so that you're 100% comfortable with all the steps required to carry out a fire mission using the Mark 6 mortar. Now, this is only going to cover off on the Mark 6 mortar, but a lot of the principles and steps involved in this process you can carry across to things like the Sholef and other platforms as well. The first thing you're going to want to do is find a sign like this, or like the truck next to me, and spawn in whatever relevant equipment you need. So as a Gulf member, you'll be required to spawn in your equipment at base according to whatever your 1IC or 2IC wants, and then load it up into a vehicle. So you'll come to a sign like this, select what you want. So in this case, I want the Mark 6 mortar and ammunition. I'll spawn that in, and then I'll make sure I spawn in the mortar components, which obviously is the actual components of the mortar from which we'll fire the mortar rounds using this ammo box. Next thing we'll do is take it over to the MTVR, and we'll load it up into whatever vehicle it is. It might be a Polaris, it might be an APC, it might be a Sholef, what have you. So I'll load both of these crates into the vehicle so we can move them around for quick transportation, and then I'll jump in the MTVR and take you over to where we'll be firing our mortar from. Okay, now that I'm at my location, I'm going to ACE interact on the cargo of my vehicle and unload the relevant crates so they can be used and moved over to where we're going to set up our mortar and do our actual fire missions from. It's worth mentioning you can rename the names of these containers. So as you saw, the mortar components is just called NATO Special Weapons, which is a little bit ambiguous. You can rename those so you can see and understand and discern them a little bit better when you're looking at the cargo of a vehicle. So you just click rename on the interaction menu and you type in whatever. So I'm just going to type in mortar ammunition for just easy recognition. And I'll pick it up and I'll move it over to where we're going to be setting up the mortar. Now it's important you keep your ammo close by so you can quickly keep those rounds going out. Now we'll grab the mortar base plate out of the components box, and that goes in your launcher slot. Then to place it, all you do is ACE interact and go place tripod. Then move back over to the components and grab the Mark 6 mortar tube. Now it is very heavy, so you'll probably end up moving slowly, so that's why it's important we move the box close initially. And then you just ACE interact on the base plate that you've already put down, and you hit assemble, and it does its thing, and then eventually you'll have a Mark 6 mortar appear in front of you. Now that we have our mortar placed, we could start looking at finding our target and understanding the map marker and what they want, and then actually firing the mortar. Now these are the basic parts of your average mortar target for Gulf. As you can see, starting on the left, the marker is a white destroy marker, and then the target type is the MT, the Mike Tango. That can also be ST for smoke target, but in this case it means mortar target. The 1-1 references the platoon, so they are 1-1. If they were at 1-0, that would obviously be 1-0. And then number of marker is the number of the mortar target that they have placed. So if they've placed a mortar target down already, this would be MT1102B rather than 01. And that scales up per section. It's individual to the section, not overall. And then at the end, it's just the call sign. So if my call sign Fox were to call in their fourth mortar target for the night, it would read Mike Tango 1004F. Now keep in mind there are other types of mortar targets like immediate fire missions, which are the same thing except they have immediate priority over any other fire mission that you're doing at the time. And there's also broken arrow, which is when you have to essentially bomb everything within a certain radius around a call sign who is declared broken arrow, meaning that they are in dire straits essentially. So now that we know how to read and understand mortar targets, I can now plonk down one for myself to practice firing the mortar. So I'm going to put one on the stadium here, make sure it's a destroy marker and make sure that it's white, and then in the text I will enter in Mike Tango 1001G. Now that we have our mortar target marker, we can start calculating the actual fire mission. So the first thing I'm going to do is control right click on myself and then drag the distance line down to the mortar target. This is a really easy way to find the distance from me to my mortar target, which is really important. So it's 714 meters. Then I go back to myself, I right click and then click compass to get the azimuth. So as you can see there, right above where it says right click, you can see my azimuth, and I'll be able to use that to enter into my mortar and actually rotate it so I'm facing the right direction when I end up doing my mortar target strike. So as we can see there, the azimuth is about 3101 or 3101. Now it's really important we're as accurate as possible, as the further away a target gets, the more likely you are to have large deviations from your target if you're 1 or 2 mils out. Now the next step is to find the height, so the altitude difference between me and that mortar target. So I control right click again on the mortar target, and this handy visualization will show up. Now because the stadium is flat, that grey line down the bottom will be completely flat, but if it's on a slanted surface, there will actually be a visualization of the height, and we can move that red line backwards and forwards across to find exactly what the height is of that mortar target location. Now that we have the height of our mortar target location, we can find out the elevation difference between us and that mortar target. So our current elevation is 157 meters, as you can see on the micro dagger on the right, and the elevation of the target is 27 meters. All we need to do is take away the elevation of the target from our current elevation, being 157 minus 27, which gives us 130, meaning that there is 130 meters of elevation difference between us and our target. So we now have the most important parts and the necessary parts to do a fire mission. We've got the azimuth, the range, and the elevation difference between us and our target. We need to remember all 3 of these numbers so we can use them to actually align the mortar and begin the fire mission. Now that we've done all our map calculations, it's time to bring out the range card. This is done by using a self-interact, going to equipment, and then bringing up whatever relevant range card it is. In this situation, it's the Mark 6 mortar range card. Because the range between the fire mission and our location is quite low, we will be setting our charge to 1. What you set your charge to essentially sets the maximum range a shot can be fired, but also raises the minimum distance that a shot can be fired. For example, setting our charge to 2 would allow us to hit a target at 2.5 kilometers because our maximum range increased, but we wouldn't be able to fire on a target 700 meters away because our minimum range increased as well. In this example, we will be using charge 1. This means we have to use the charge 1 section of the range table. Click it to open it, and then use the range that you calculated earlier and find it on the range table. In this case, it's 700 meters. Just to the right of that will be the number we have to set our mortar elevation to. However, we also need to compensate for the altitude difference, which we also calculated. To do this, we add 5 because according to the range table, we need to add 5 to our elevation for every 100 meters for which we're above the target. Keep in mind that if we were below the target, we would have to remove 5 from our elevation. So to run through it quickly, we first look for our range, which is 700 meters. Take the number to the right of that, which is the elevation we'll be setting our mortar to. Add 5 because we're above the target by 125 meters, which equals 1,423. This is the final elevation, which we'll enter into our mortar in a second. Okay, now we have all the data we need to complete the actual fire mission. First, enter the mortar and set your azimuth. This is done simply by looking in the top right at the AZ reading or the number at the top of the crosshair and moving your mouse left or right to change the angle the mortar is facing. Do this until the AZ reading or the number at the top of the crosshair is the number that you calculated earlier, which in our case is 3,130. Next, you need to set your mortar elevation. This is done by getting in the mortar and then hitting page up or page down until the elevation reading in the top right or in the bottom right on the screen reads the number you calculated earlier. In our case, it was 1,423. Next, you need to load the round that was requested for the fire mission, usually HE or smoke. Put whatever round that was requested into your backpack and then ACE interact on the muzzle of the mortar. This will load an individual round. Now you need to load each round individually, so try and have someone with you that can do the loading for you while you're firing on the mortar. Once you've got the round loaded, all you have to do is enter the mortar and click and the shot will fire. After you've fired, load the next round and be prepared to make adjustments depending on the accuracy of the shot. Whatever call sign that called in the fire mission will let you know how far north, south, east or west you need to adjust. If they tell you the shot is accurate, continue firing until the fire mission is complete. Ensure you're also following proper safety and radar procedure at all times.